Welcome to the second episode of See Here's the Deal. Now, I gotta tell you, this will be my first episode leading as my partner, Mario, is taking a backseat to this one. And I am here with Maranda Morales, who is our Chief Investment Officer, and one of the original Vesta employees.
The OG?
One of the OGs.
Not the OG, but one of them.
One of the OGs. And so I'm going to be taking Mario's spot, introducing everything, leading the podcast. Not as smooth, but and just want to welcome Maranda to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure.
So, obviously, with our first blog post being heavily about you.
Yeah, I was surprised. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
That brought a few tears to my eyes.
And then starting the podcast, figured it was a great place to start. Just talk about, how everything started coming together. I figured today will, be real natural, but obviously we'll start with probably our first time meeting each other and what the next few days were like on both of our ends. And then reminisce a little bit about how we've grown, where we've come from, and how we got here.
Yeah, sounds great. It's a lot to get into.
Yeah. So I'll give the backstory on how we met.
Please, yeah.
All right, so...
Because I want to hear your perspective and then my perspective.
So, I was looking for a new employee, for someone who could help in a leadership position and really grow with us. At that point, we had already bought Thrive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we owned 300 units, and I started driving around Tulsa trying to meet property managers and offer them jobs. And everywhere I went, I wasn't particularly impressed. I didn't like the people, whatever. There was a reason why. And then on my way back to Marquee, I stopped at the last property between Marquee and the highway.
Yeah.
And popped in. And the only person at the office was Maranda. And we got to know each other. I was blown away. And from that moment on, I knew that Maranda was going to be a huge part of our growth if we could at least get her to join the team. And I'll say my favorite recollection, which I know we've talked about before in the past, but like sometimes I take weird pauses, right? I can take a weird pause. And
they're dramatic pauses.
Dramatic, also just talk so much that my lungs literally need a little bit of air.
Yeah.
So you were showing me a unit. Didn't know who I was yet, but right when we got into the unit, I said, "Hey, I'm not here looking for an apartment." But then, unfortunately, took a breath.
Yes.
So what I said was, "I'm not here looking for an apartment." It's like, wait, no, hold on. That's not where I meant to end that sentence. And I explained to her that I was trying to find someone to hire. So that was my first experience with Maranda. What on the backside, on your side, what do you remember about that day?
I remember so much because this is a pivotal moment in my life where my life has completely changed, and I feel like the stars align, universe, God, whatever you believe in, intervened that day on my behalf because I did not know what the hell I was going to be doing with my life, to be quite honest. I was in my last semester of college with a criminal justice degree. So absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't want to become a cop. And my friend Chelsea, who was a leasing agent, I moved into that property and she convinced me to work there because I got a 30% discount. And as a poor college student, I'm like, yes, please. I don't care what the job is. I'll take it. Sold. So anyways, I didn't know what I was going to be doing, long story short. And then you come in. And it's one of those things, like in the moment, things are happening so quickly that you're not really piecing together all of the details. But then I look back on it and I'm like, wow, it was so obvious that you were not there for an apartment. Because there were so many things that just did not align. Now, again, I have a background in criminal justice. So I'm kind of like piecing this together and I'm like, as we're having a conversation, like that was really odd. I remember I had asked you for your ID because you take an ID when you show someone an apartment, and I saw that your ID said Kansas, but you told me that you're moving to Oklahoma from Texas, which honestly is true.
Which actually was true.
It was true. That wasn't fabricated. But that was my first sign that I was like, that's a little weird. And I remember looking at your tags on your car, and it said Florida. And
rental car.
You had a rental car. Of course, I did not know any of those details. So I was trying to like build rapport with you and ask you, like, why are you moving here? And trying to figure out what kind of apartment you wanted or needed. And I could tell that I felt like you didn't want me prying. And so I was like, some people just don't like that. That's fine. But what little information I got out of you, none of it was lining up.
I just want to point out, though, that I've never heard you say you've noticed that the car was Florida place.
I always noticed that. I've never told you that.
But the great thing about that is it just reinforces why we needed you.
Just the small details.
Yeah, like nobody else would have noticed that.
I know. Well, again, like I'm used to like studying these cases, so I am super, super paranoid. It was not healthy, but if something were to ever happen to me, I would have, probably, hopefully gotten myself out of it. But anyways, the point is, I realized like things were not adding up. I was by myself at the office, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna show him this one apartment that hopefully I can lease to him. I've been trying to lease it for a year.
You called it what, the bachelor? Like
the frat boy apartment,
yep.
Because nothing matched in this apartment, and that's why I couldn't lease it. It looked awful. I needed like a single young man that didn't care about any of those things to take this apartment.
So you're saying somebody with no style?
I'm not saying that. You're putting words in my mouth. I did not say that. I was just thinking, you know what? Like, maybe you will like this apartment that's completely mismatched. I don't know. And so this apartment was like in the far, far corner of the property, which this property had 492 units, so massive property, right? And when we get up to the apartment and you say to me, hey, I'm actually not looking for an apartment, dramatic long pause, immediately I'm like, this man's gonna chop me up into a million pieces. I'm gonna be gone. There was no witnesses. All I have is his ID in the office and this golf cart outside of this building. That's like the traces of evidence that are left right now. But then you were like, after your pause, you said, okay, actually I own apartments. And you pulled out this fancy, thick card.
Ooh, the metal business card.
The metal
business card. Yep.
And you were like, yeah, I'm looking for someone. And immediately I was like, okay, some of the fear left my body. But also I was like, this is so random. Like, you own apartments. It was kind of hard to believe.
Yeah.
And then you
for
were
you
like,
and for me, by the way.
Yeah, it was like, oh, this is interesting. But the metal card did help because I was like, I know this is probably expensive.
Right.
So that did help your story in convincing me.
You know what sucks though? I love those metal business cards.
Yeah.
But I got them. As everyone who listened to the first podcast knows, I married what Mario calls patient zero. Alicia, my now wife, made those cards.
Yeah.
And they were
Great job.
They were the best business cards ever. But unfortunately, it was right at the time where people stopped using business cards.
Right.
I remember trying to give it to somebody, and I'd never seen this before, but they took out their smartphone, took a picture of the card, and they're like, oh no, I can just save it in the contacts. And I was like,
you're like,
this sucks.
shit.
We just
spent several $100s
you know what?
on these.
Knowing that business card helped, now I know. Now
it was worth it. It was totally worth it. I hope it was for you, at least. It did help me. And I just remember you being like, I'd love to talk with you if you want to meet sometime. Me being me, I'm always down to listen to an opportunity. I really didn't have intentions of leaving that company.
Makes sense.
But something in my gut, like my intuition, my discernment was telling me, no, I need to meet with this guy. Like, I want to hear him out. And I actually had a lunch planned. I had just started dating my now partner of 6 years. And I called him. We were probably 3 weeks into dating. And I called him and I tell him the whole story. Like, yeah, he told me that he needed an apartment, but then he didn't. And then he owns this company. And so I got to cancel lunch with you. Because I remember saying, you were like, okay, well, when are you free? And I'm like, I haven't had lunch yet.
Yep.
They just lock up the office right now.
That's so much of how I think about life. I'm like, I like judge people, like low key. You know, if I'm like, hey, let's grab, want to hire you, let's grab lunch, and you're like, oh yeah, next week. It'd be like, okay, fine, right. Maybe. But you're like, yeah.
Which is unlike me though, especially me at that time in my life, because I was like struggling with anxiety. There was just, and the fact that you told me all of these things that actually were not were not the truth. And the fact that I still was like, no, I trust this person, this complete stranger. Let's go to lunch together right now. I just felt like that's what I was being told I needed to do. And I just remember that phone call with him, and I was like, I have to cancel lunch with you. And he was like, are you insane? Just point blank, like, that is probably... Knowing
him like I do now.
Yeah. He just was like, that is so crazy, and this guy, like, lied to you, and, like, all these things, and I was like, yeah, no, that's not the point. I need to go to lunch with him, and I'm so sorry that I'm canceling lunch with you, but I need to do this. And so as you can imagine, I don't think he was thrilled at that time that I canceled lunch with him. If the roles were reversed, I would probably be pretty pissed at him. But anyways, I just felt like I had to, and so I locked up, and we went to Lana Thai and the famous restaurant. And I just remember you telling me about the company, and I was like, okay, I don't plan on leaving, so basically it needs to be a pretty good offer.
By the way,
do you think I had anything? No, I didn't have anything lined up, so I was definitely bullshitting there.
We should definitely get the podcast sponsored by Lana Thai.
We should,
because it's definitely going to be brought up so many times.
Yeah.
In people's recollections of how'd you, particularly people that were hired in the first year.
Yeah.
Everyone was hired.
Everyone was hired in that one little booth as soon as you walk in to the right.
Yep. I love that booth.
They really should sponsor this. Great food, by the way, if you're
in
Tulsa.
Oh, yeah. If you're in the market for Thai food, Lana Thai is the best.
Years later, we still love this place. We went there, 2-3 weeks ago?
2-3 weeks ago, yeah.
So, yeah, Lana, we love you. So, anyways, I just remember sitting in that booth with you, and you were telling me a little bit about the company, and you were really compelling. Like, your story was just really incredible, and you had such conviction with your dreams and your aspirations, and I thought, wow, this is really incredible. I want to be a part of this. And yeah, I didn't have anything backed up, so I felt like I was kind of talking a lot of game, oh, I want this offer and I want it in writing, but who was I to say that? But yeah, it was ridiculous. And so anyways, I remember telling you okay, I'm gonna do a little bit of research. I would love to meet your current team members if I can go by. And you were really great. You were like, yes, absolutely. You were like, I'll give you a list of my investors and you can talk to people, but don't go to the website.
Don't go to the website.
Because it's just a picture of me. And I was like, what do you mean? And
so a little background here. So our initial website was a work in progress, and we had gotten some advice that the website should be a picture of me and everything surrounds it. It didn't, by the way, sound right to me at the time either, and it didn't sound right to Alicia. But we were so active fundraising, and we were so active buying Marquee and then buying Thrive immediately thereafter, that we didn't really have time to focus on the website.
Right.
And so I remember when we got to that part in the conversation, I was like, the Tulsa Journal had just done an article about us. Yes. After we bought Thrive. And so I was like, oh, okay, so if she Googles, she'll see that we're real. And then I was like, oh God, but that website, she's just gonna look at it and she's gonna be, what is this? Because I always looked at that website what is this?
Yeah, and I did go to it even though you told me not to.
From a psychological perspective, the worst thing I could do is probably tell you not to go to the website. Yeah. And you're like, all right, now I'm definitely going to the website.
Literally the first thing I did as soon as I got back to my office. I was like, I got to see this website. Sure enough, it was just a photo of you.
Yeah.
But I did read the articles that you sent me too.
And then you and my wife later called it the sad eyes photo.
Yeah, you had very sad eyes. Yeah. I don't know what was going on with that picture. But I don't know if you were just going through a hard time.
It was a headshot from a previous company I had worked for.
Oh my God. Imagine starting your own company and you don't even take a new headshot. You take it from the previous company.
I don't like pictures of myself, so I was just
okay. Yeah, fair enough. I get it.
I'm not particularly photogenic.
Okay, I disagree. But we don't have to go down that. We don't have to go down that. No, so yeah, the side-eye photos or the picture, a headshot on the website and everything. And then later that afternoon, well, and by the way, I was like, hey, I want this in writing because you're a complete stranger. Like, I want to have something that I can say, like, no, this is legitimate. And I think between Lana and the property that I worked at the time was maybe a 10-minute drive, if that, like 5 to 10 minutes, very, very close by. And by the time I got back, there was already an offer letter in my email. And I was like, okay,
let's go.
Like, that is a really good sign. Like, he's serious about this, you know? And I actually think Alicia typed that up. I'm pretty positive she did.
Probably.
Because I remember I wanted to change and you were like, okay, I gotta have my assistant change this and then we'll send it back to you.
That makes all the sense in the world. I probably got done with lunch and was like, hey, we need to get this offer letter out now.
It was very quick, and I was really impressed with that. And so later that night, I went to Thrive Jinx, and I was like, okay, I want to meet whoever you currently have here, and I want to look at the property, and I want to ask them questions without you present just to see what they would say. And everyone had nothing but amazing things to say about you.
So, all right, well, I guess it's fine. I'm so curious. After
the main person that had amazing things to say about you, Cynthia Gonzalez.
CG.
CG, yeah.
That's fun.
And you know, your team was saying like you're involved and you know like what's going on at the property and you're always just a phone call away, if not there pretty much every day, because at that point you had two
You know what's
properties.
so funny about that though is like I would estimate 65 to 70% of the employees that have ever worked for Vesta would say it's so great that Marc's involved.
Yeah.
But like, goddamn, the other 35% are like, I've never been in a company where you have to answer
where
questions
the owner's so involved.
and you have to answer his questions, and so it's really funny that like I always tell people that the right person for Vesta thinks that that's cool.
Yeah. Well, and it is like it shows that you care, right? It shows that you actually give a shit about what's going on in your company, what's happening at your properties. I mean, and I don't want to jump too far ahead into our story and my history with Vesta, but I remember at one point with Marquis, I was like, Marc, you gotta quit going to the office.
Yeah, you actually like sis, I had to make like an appointment. You were like, you can't
You would call me.
You were like, you can't go in without me knowing.
Because here's the problem. You were so involved, which I love, but you would be like, oh yeah, let's do this special or do this, and then I would come down on the team and I'd say, who came up with this? Who approved this? And they're like, well, Marc was here.
To this day, though, like, that still happens.
Yeah.
It's still, I think of you all the time in that regard, because, like, if I'm sitting at the office for any given day, I get, because I don't like pretending like anything's above me, right?
Right.
Like, or beneath me. Nothing in this business is beneath me. If somebody wants me to have an opinion on something, I will have an opinion on it.
Right.
And so when people come to me with like an idea or a thought, the last thing I ever want to say is, I'm not interested in that.
Right.
You have to talk to somebody beneath me because that's just not important. And so I thought that was always a good thing.
No, it is.
But then on the flip side though, when you have somebody skipping like 5 levels of their their boss's boss,
right.
then it's like, wait, how did this get approved?
Right.
Oh, Marc said it's fine.
Yeah.
It's actually really bad. And you were the person that taught me that. So I remember, I definitely remember when you were like, yeah, you need to stop going into Marquis.
Yeah, and I remember you would call me and you'd be like, hey, Miranda, I want to go to Marquis today. Is it okay? And I'm like, oh my God, I felt awful because I'm like, you do not have to ask me for approval to go to your own freaking property. Do what you want. Like, that was not my intention.
You know what though? This gives me a little plug for what we're writing about right now. Like what I'm very passionate about kind of writing about my philosophies on how to manage employees, people close to you, whatever. And the concept being that I've always believed that people shouldn't be alone, right? Like you can't give somebody a job and then give them no support.
Right.
But the other thing you can't do is you can't give somebody a job and then micromanage the hell out of the way that they do it. And so I remember at that time realizing that like it's not, I don't want like an investor, if anyone's watching this, to say, oh well, like Marc wasn't stopped going to Marquis. No, I was still there.
Yeah.
You know, but like recognizing that if I didn't need you, I wouldn't have brought you on.
Right.
I clearly needed you, and for that reason, things had to run in a way that was conducive to letting you grow as a manager and as a leader. Mm-hmm. And then my job was to be there to both support you and give you input from what I was seeing. So I remember being frustrated.
I don't think that was an easy conversation.
Well, no, I don't think.
At least that's not how I remember it.
Props to you for having it though, right?
I remember those early days, we had so many interesting conversations because when I started, I just really wanted to dig my heels in and I'm like, what can I do? Because this man has given me such an incredible opportunity. And I, just to back up a little bit, I remember you pretty much promising me like, hey, I have a bunch of dreams and I have goals and I'm gonna achieve them and I need the right people. And if you come along with me, then you're going to achieve your goals too, and you're going to be a part of this success. And I wholeheartedly believe that, and I still believe that to this day. And obviously, your dreams and a lot of your goals have come true. And so I just remember, you had such conviction with what you were saying, and I was just like, okay, I believe and I trust this person, and even though I didn't know you. And there were those few days before I actually decided to join, where my supervisor at the time,
right, which I wrote about.
Yeah, shout out to her. If you're listening, you know who you are.
You know who you are.
I don't want to spill too much tea, and I don't want to name drop you, but it was interesting conversations because it was like trying to stay on the phone with me for a couple hours, like we can match all of these things and we can do this, and I'm like, at first she kind of got in my head a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it was like, this isn't a real company and all of these things. And to be quite honest, like a lot of people that knew me, my friends, my family members were like, Miranda, are you sure about this? Like, this is quite the risk. And from my point of view, I'm like, it's worth the risk. What do I have to lose? I have no game plan for my life right now.
I think that's what made you and I such good partners is that we're different, but they're so similar.
Yeah.
Because when I started Vesta, so in the last podcast episode, Mario and I talked about the initial, call it year before Vesta, going up through close of Marquis. And one of the things that we were reliving was what it was like for me to make the decision to leave the Australian company I was working for.
Right.
And I'll always remember I was sitting in my free apartment in Austin talking to my parents about how I've made this decision. It's like January 2017. I've made this decision. I'm gonna get this deal under contract and go out on my own. And my dad, who's always supportive of me, was like, because for years my mom had always told me like, be careful, don't take too much on. But even my dad at that point was like, are you really ready to start your own? That's a big. Are you sure you want to do that? Kind of similar to how like your friends feel like, are you sure you want to do that? And my response to him was exactly the same as yours. Like, Dad, I got no girlfriend. Like, what do I have to lose?
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. So like it
doesn't work out. And I'm in the same position.
Exactly. I'm in the exact same position I'm in now. It was when I said that, my dad was like, well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But hearing you say that right now is just so interesting because little did you know that like 9 months before you were having that conversation with your friends and family, I was having that same conversation with my friends and family.
And I would have never guessed that. Honestly, the way that you presented yourself was so like as if you had been running this company for years. Like you had this whole game plan, like you knew everything that you were gonna do. And whether you did or not, I don't know, but it was very compelling and very convincing. Which you've always been great at speaking and talking to people and really captivating people. And so now that I know you, that's not a surprise at all. But not knowing you at the time, I was like, wow, okay, like, yeah, he's doing this. I had these people kind of like in the back of my brain, like in my head telling me, are you sure you want to do this? And there for a slight moment, I was like, oh my God, am I sure? Like all the people in my life are telling me, but like this doesn't, like it feels going forward with this feels so right, and I don't like that everyone's telling me that it doesn't, that it's wrong, you know? And I remember I called you and I said, you know, my boss is telling me all of these things, and I'm a little in my head, and I'm a little unsure now, and I will never forget that conversation, because you said, listen, at the end of the day, do what's best for you. If staying with this company is ultimately what's best for you and makes you the happiest, then by all means, yes, don't stress yourself out. Don't give yourself anxiety. Like, don't come work for me if you really don't want to. And it was in that moment that I was like, I'm packing up my shit right now. Like, I'm gonna come work for this guy, because no one, like my boss that had known me for a while was not saying those things to me. He doesn't even know me. And he's putting telling me to put my happiness first. Whereas these people that know me, this boss that I've been working with for a while, is trying to use fear in order to keep me there. And again, like saying they can meet all of these offers that, you know, and they're gonna pay me this, and they're gonna do that. In that moment, I was like, well, then why haven't you?
Yeah.
Like, that's so, I always laugh when people do that and I hear of supervisors doing that, because I'm like, some people that will work, right? And they'll say, okay, great, match it and I'll stay and whatever. But in that, you know, when you're hearing that, if you're someone who can stop and think for a moment and you're like, wait a minute, so you're saying you could have been offering me these things this entire time and you chose not to?
But you know what's so interesting about that is that, like, I used to feel exactly like you did. Like, it's almost like a slap in the face. Being where we've been for the last 7 years, though, there have been so many employees over the years that when they gave us notice, we're like, look, what do we have to do to keep you? Because we don't want to lose you. Yeah. And they're like, well, I have a better salary option. And you're like, I think it's one of those things where we are then put in a position of like, what's best for the property? Yeah. Is it best to lose this person and be at our budget on payroll? Or is it better to break budget on payroll and keep this person? Mm-hmm. And if it's better to do that, then you try to match. And I definitely get it, because for that person, they might say, well, we both felt like before we ended up in our positions currently, of like, well, you could have done that all along. Yeah. But realistically, it's not a great position to be put in on our end, that we either have to lose a high-performing employee who we think very highly of, or alternatively break budget, which, you know, budgets are carefully crafted. They're, you know, investors depend on us to more or less hit our budget. So that's, for me, that's one of those weird spots where it's like, oh man, like, I'm only gonna match somebody if I'm comfortable going back to my partners and investors and saying we had to. Yeah. So by the way, it's kind of a badge of honor for you, right? Like. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, I think, and that's what I wrote that blog post about, was like, I think one of the things that we have been so successful together on is genuinely caring about the people who ended up in our orbit. And even people that maybe don't, even people that we had to part ways with, right? And they might not look at us as positively as I think we can be so proud that we've been different than like the company you worked at, or several of the companies that I worked at before, where we really tried to put people in positions to be successful. We really tried to listen to people. Even if it was worse for us, we tried to put ourselves out there to make things work. I can think of 100 examples, you know? But it's so interesting to hear your side of that offer and the negotiation and what happened with the, you know, in the days before you said, I'm in.
Yeah, there was so much happening and there were so many thoughts going on in my mind, and there was that little back and forth, but then like that phone call really sealed the deal. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna just put my all into this. When she said that she could match it, the truth is she couldn't, and there was just no way. And so I knew there was no way that company was going to offer me what you offered me. And say that they were able to, they were genuinely able to. It was weird to me that a complete stranger believed more in me than someone that I had been working my ass off for a while.
Of course, that whole rant that I just went on was kind of based on like financial aspects. But if I remember correctly, we put something in the offer letter that you would have like 3 promotion opportunities within 6 months. Yeah.
Yes.
And so you're right. Like, it's not only about the finance. It's the finances. They could have matched if they wanted to. They could have matched financial elements of what we were offering you.
Yeah.
But you're right. There was that belief that, like, look, if you're gonna tell me you give me 3 different options within 6 months, like.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me, like, you can decline all these offers and I'll still give you a raise and you'll be an extremely
highly paid. Yep. I remember saying that to you.
And I was like, you know what? That's so right.
You asked the question. You go, what happens? What happens if I don't like any of the offers you give me? And I was like, well, then I guess you're just the highest paid property manager in the state of Oklahoma. I don't know.
Right. And I was like, okay, that doesn't sound bad. Like, if that's like the worst case scenario, then done. Like, where do I sign? And that's really how it happened. I mean, there was so much that was happening at that time, and there's so many nuances and just, I wish I could have recorded what was going on for me in that lifetime, not knowing how important it was going to be. But yeah, the stars really aligned. I often think back and think, what if you didn't turn into that property?
Yeah.
Like, where would I be?
Where would both of us be, though?
It's a terrifying
I look at it as I always say that, Alicia and I built this together because there was literally 1 month of Vesta's existence that Alicia was not a part of, and that was the first month, so it was like the least amount that actually happened. Right? It was a lot of sitting around.
Right.
But second to Alicia, you coming on board was one of those transformative moments for us. So you can, I know, and we've talked about this before, where you feel like, where would you be without us? But from our perspective, where would we be without you?
Thank you for saying that. That means so much to me, seriously. I feel like when I decided to make the decision to come work for Vesta, I made a promise to myself that I was going to do whatever it took to help you be successful and to see Vesta, reach all of its goals. And it didn't matter what it was. I didn't care if it fit into my job description, which we didn't have job descriptions at the time.
Right, we didn't believe it. Yep.
But had I had one, I was doing things that I was literally YouTubing. I didn't know what to do. But there was this running joke that I would say, well, we'll just figure it out. And that's really like the approach I had to take.
Yep.
Because there was not much going on as far as organization. Yep. I remember, I think my first day I called you and I said, Marc, your lease is 3 pages long.
Yeah, it was the lease that we got from our first attorney.
I said, we need a longer lease.
Oh, gosh.
I had my notebook. I was keeping track of everything.
Is that for years, you and I had the argument over Blue Moon.
I know. And look, we have Blue Moon.
And now we have Blue Moon, right?
For
those of you not familiar, Blue Moon is the national, database for the national centerpiece for leases, apartment leases in the U.S.
Yeah.
And it's all standardized. Now, for the first, until I gave in, because Blue Moon's expensive.
Very expensive, by the way.
Right. I just felt like, we could save money by having a lawyer draft our lease.
But laws are changing. Go figure.
They change all the time.
They're changing.
And look.
Come to find out, a 3-page lease will not hold up in court more than likely.
Probably not. You probably haven't covered enough of. I forgot that. But I forgot that we used that lease. Yeah, that was.
I just remember being like, "Where's the rest of the lease?" And then Cynthia Gonzalez was like, "Yeah, no, girl, that's it." And I was like, "No, I gotta call Marc right now." So yeah, I had my notebook and I was keeping track of things. And even though I wasn't the most experienced. I mean, at the time I'm 22. And so I was just like, we gotta figure some of this stuff out because I can see this being a problem down the road. Thank God you were open to all of those conversations, and even if it did end up in a little tiff or you didn't like that I was bringing it to your attention, you were always still open to hear.
Oh, I never mind anything being brought to my attention. It's just
yeah.
No, but so it's like that. We have to balance cost savings, and then
right.
So after the first couple months,
yes,
where do you want to go? What should we, I have an inclination to talk to you about your least favorite moments, but I actually know about one of them.
Okay.
The one that I think you'd go with would probably be the Regency close.
That was rough.
That was rough.
That was pretty
That
rough.
was rough. And I don't know if it's worth, I don't know where you want to take the conversation. But like, what were some of the most memorable closes for you?
Memorable closes. Okay. For good or bad reasons, or just because there were a couple where it was like, oh my gosh, like the first one that came to mind, just because it was one of the first whenever I started, was Lexington Commons and Waterford. And I remember we were at Lexington and we were in the office and we just closed.
And you've been with us about a year.
Yeah, I've been with you for a while and, kind of had a grasp on things. And we were sitting in the office and we were trying to get everything sorted. And I don't know if I got a call from, I don't remember who I got the call from. Probably was you. But the call was, okay, hey, we're going to close on another property next week.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah. So the funny story about that was, ever since we bought Marquis, we had always been under contract on something to buy. That whole 18 months.
Yes.
But when we got Lexington and Waterford under contract, first time we tried to do 2 deals simultaneous. Which, do you remember at one point in time in 21, we had like 18 deals going?
Yeah,
it might be slightly exaggerated, but I think it was over 10.
You would have told me that was going to happen, like, early on. I probably would have thrown up when you told me.
Yeah, right, because 2 was hard enough.
2, I thought I was, like, spiraling.
Right, and I remember saying we're never doing this again. But basically, what had happened on the backside of that was we couldn't figure out a close date for Lexington because it was a debt assumption. So we had no power to figure out a close date. And there were all sorts of kind of internal issues between Vesta and its investment partner in Waterford, where we were trying to like get our ducks in a row, and so we thought we had another month and change to close on Waterford when we were given the go-ahead to close on Lexington. Yeah. So we went ahead and got Lexington closed when the bank approved the loan assumption. And Alicia and I were like driving to Kansas City and we were gonna celebrate the close of Lexington. And while we were on the way, I got a call from our equity partner who was like, hey, we can't close on that day, but we also can't do another full month. They were like, we have to close a week later. But that didn't work for the seller because the seller was paying off a bond, and bond payments all have to be done on the 15th of the month. So from the seller's perspective, you're either closing this 15th or you're closing the next 15th. I don't care which one it is. And they were like, no, wait, no. We want to close like the 22nd. And so it occurred to me that we're closing on the 15th. And that gave us exactly 1 week to take a deal that we were a month away from. Over a month would have been a tight close.
Right, yeah.
And we closed that thing in a week.
Yeah.
And that was tough.
To say, I wanted to go into the fetal position. I was like...
Do you remember when I laid down on your office floor?
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
You laid down on my office floor over the Waterford close.
Yep.
And I didn't even know what to do. You just laid there, and I was like, okay, well, feel your feelings, but like, what do we do now?
You're like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'll be fine.
And mind you, okay, that wasn't even really an office. That was an apartment, and you had the main bedroom as your office. I had the second bedroom as my office.
We actually talked about this in the first episode.
It's so funny thinking back about that. I talked about this yesterday, actually, because I was like, Alicia, Chris, and Camille used the dining room and the living room as their office space.
Yep.
And we had a couch and we had an Xbox. And for some reason, you had a crate of beef jerky. And you had all of those Bath and Body Works candles. And like cigar. And like, I remember there were vendors or whoever needed to stop by. And I would just think, oh my God.
Because I had lived in that
can't
apartment.
come here.
I had once lived in that apartment.
Yes, I know.
So
well, that was the thing. It was Marc's apartment.
It was initially my apartment. Then I lived at Thrive, and then we officed out of there. So it still had my Xbox. It still had like some snacks that I had.
Yeah.
It still had like some remnants of
It was lived in.
It was still, it still had some remnants of me living in it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was such a funny setup. I think back to that, and we would hang out on the balcony and stuff, and
with all the wasps.
Yeah, it was such a good time. But yeah, you came into the second bedroom, aka my office, laid in the floor. You were like, "What are we gonna do?" Which, to be honest, did not provide me with a lot of comfort.
right. Because
I was also feeling like that. So yeah, that was.
There's only one other time in any of my jobs I've ever laid on the floor, and it's very different circumstances. When I was an assistant manager back in like 2011 or 2012 or something like that, I was during summer I was getting extra money teaching tennis, and so it had been a Saturday where I wasn't working at the apartment, so I was working tennis all day, and I got overheated. So I walked into the bathroom and just laid down so that my body could have like some cold, you know.
Like that's acceptable.
Wait,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's much more acceptable than laying down in your office and just feel the floor. Yep.
You're like, I'm just gonna hang out here for a while. So yeah, naturally I started panicking, and we pulled it off. I don't know how we did it. I can't even tell you what happened.
It was a lot of pain. My parents were in town that weekend. So the close was supposed to happen on... Soft close was supposed to happen on Monday. Final close was supposed to happen Tuesday morning. My parents were there that weekend. By Saturday night, our partner was unsure of... I had figured out how to deal with everything and had a deal in place with the seller, but then our partner wasn't totally comfortable. So Saturday night, he was like, I don't think I want to do what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And so it was like Sunday, I just spent like, this deal's not happening. And we have all this earnest money up. Like, I don't know what's going on here. And all of this, by the way, none of this was about the investment. It was all about the damn timing. And so it was just this needless, like, and it's something I've said recently, which is, there's a deal that we've had under contract. We're not saying the name of deals we have under contract because it violates some on advice of counsel. Could violate some confidentiality. But the deal that isn't closing until April, right? Somebody asked me why not just give it up, and they said, "Is it because of the earnest money?" And I said, "No. At this point in my career, I could let the earnest money go, but I don't want to let the deal go because it's one of the best deals I've seen. So why would I want to let it go?" And at the time, Waterford was the same concept, although a little different because the earnest money lost then would have been more substantial than it is today for me. But I was like, I love this deal. Like, we can't lose it over shenanigans. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a really interesting close.
That was
really tough.
We did it, and it was, oh my gosh, once we were done with it, I was like, thank God, I don't know how we did that, but we did.
Other memorable closes.
I was gonna. Well, go ahead.
No, I was gonna guess.
Okay, guess.
Seminole Ridge. You, Alicia, and Chris trashing out.
I had a different one, but yes, that was memorable. I'm
gonna brag on. I'm very proud of our leadership team, so I'm gonna brag about you guys for just a second because, there's different ways that leaders can lead, right? Leaders can lead from a seat above everybody else, or leaders can get their hands dirty and show people what it's like. When we bought Seminole Ridge, it was in such rough condition that Miranda, Alicia, and Chris left the corporate office in Tulsa, drove to Oklahoma City, and were trashing out dirty mattresses.
Like 50 shopping carts.
I
I don't know how many shopping carts showed up at this property. We would wheel them into a trash bin, and then they would show back up. And we were like, where are these freaking...
The incredible
where
thing
are these
about
coming
that,
from?
from an investment perspective, we love a good location, right?
Yes.
And for workforce housing, you consider a good workforce housing location, with good proximity shopping. And so Seminole Ridge has big box retail right next to it. And from an investor perspective, and from we'd look at that and we'd say, oh great, that's a great location. But the damn shopping carts would tell you something different because people just walk the shopping cart, leave it at our property, which is, by the way, why Walmart has you can't take their shopping carts.
Right. Yeah, because they were ending up at Seminole Ridge.
Because they were ending at Seminole Ridge. All of them. All of them.
It seemed like all of them. No, that was such a fun time. Obviously, we kind of specialize in value add. So we're expecting when we get these properties, there needs to be some elbow grease. Like, we need to clean it up because if not us, who's going to do it, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it was so funny because I, like, put on my ball cap and my jeans and my tennis shoes, and we just started picking up trash. And of course, like, Alicia was like snapping pictures of us, and so I have one up in my office, and it looks like we're part of like the prison. You know what I mean? Like the prison gang where they're like, all right, we're gonna take you to the side of the road and you're gonna pick up all the trash. That's what this photo looks like. Like, I have a little sticker and I'm like holding up a piece of trash and I have a 5-gallon bucket. And we spent the entire day.
What was your job title when we closed on Seminole?
Oh my god, I couldn't even tell you. I think I was just a regional, maybe.
No,
I'm
I think
not
it was
sure.
SVP. I think it was SVP by then.
Maybe. I've had so many.
You've had a lot of
roles.
titles. Yeah, it's hard to keep track. I don't think you were just you weren't a regional then because you had.
No, that was later on.
That was Seminole was later on because
Right.
your region, the only region that you had was Thrive, Marquee, Lakeside, Shoreline.
Yeah, that's right.
You gave up being a region. You got promoted when we bought Shoreline.
Yeah, it was rather quickly. So you're right. I was not a
2018.
regional.
No, that was the promotion, right? Because
Yeah.
so when we talk about the three, within a year we were supposed to give you three promotion opportunities. The first one was to be the head of Vesta in Little Rock.
Yeah, which was 2 weeks into me working.
Which was 2 weeks.
So I was flabbergasted.
I told you.
I was like, wow, he really kept his word because we're 2 weeks in and I've already gotten my first promotion. And that was like mind blowing.
And because of your relationship, was the main reason that you didn't want to take on the Arkansas expansion.
Yes.
So then we recircled and gave you the region, the one region, because at this point all we owned was Marquee, Thrive, and Lakeside. We were under contract on Shoreline, and we were beginning management of Thrive Argenta. And you then ended up taking the region, and Garrett went to Arkansas.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
So by the time Seminole, you would have been.
I was, yeah. It was in a totally different position. It kind of all, like, that was so long ago, it kind of all.
But the reason that's
together.
important is because, like, you know, for anyone listening, like, how do you be successful in a role that you've been growing into for a couple of years like you did? It's by being, as you said earlier, nothing's out of your job description, right? Like, if we're taking over this property and it's not being, and it needs extra hands for cleanup, like, I'm gonna be there. If I have to wheel shopping carts back to whichever retailer they came from, from whence they came.
By the way, they were like, we called them, we're like, do you want these back? And they were like, no, we don't want them back. They wouldn't take them. I was like, you guys don't want your shopping carts? Come on, we have so many.
It's like the opposite of loss prevention.
Yes.
It's like loss. Like,
I thought for sure we were doing like a good deed by trying to return their carts to them, but they did not want them. So, yeah. I totally forgot about that. That is such a fun memory, and every time I see that photo in the hallway, I laugh and I think about that.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
What were you gonna?
So I was gonna say the Erica.
Oh, okay.
That was such a good, fun close for me, except for the fact that, like, for whatever reason, our attorney at the time did not tell me, or really anyone else. I don't think for that matter.
I think I know what you're about to say. And I don't think I knew either.
No. Oh, you didn't, because I called you and I was like,
what were you gonna say?
Well, okay, so it was right before the close, and I think we kept on some of the team members. So actually, it had to have been after the close because we kept some of the team members from the previous owners.
Yep.
And they were like, they contacted me and said, so when are you guys going to get rid of all the signage and change the name of the property? Yep. And I was like, why would we change the name? We're not going to do that. And they were like, but no, you legally have to.
Yep.
And I said, there's no way that's true. Our attorney 100% would have told me that.
You called me, and I was like, no, that's not true, but I'll call our attorney. I called our attorney, and he was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just so casual. He was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got to take down every single sign. And
everything
you can't
with their name
use
on it.
Anything, which, if you've been to an apartment complex, you see, like, the name is plastered on everything. It was so wild because you don't realize it until you have to get rid of everything that has its name on it, because it was like every sign throughout the property, the map when you pull up to the property, obviously the signage off the road, like every single thing had this name on it.
Yep.
And so we talked, and I think we joked. You said, Alicia at one point made me promise to name a property after her. And I said, okay, well, let's just.
I wasn't joking about that.
No,
though.
you weren't. And we were like, okay, well then let's just name this property after her.
I was gonna actually say that this is actually a lesson in how to take something that sounds like a bad situation and find positivity in it. Because, yeah, I mean, we had no intention to do a name change. Thankfully, we have large contingencies in our budget, but we didn't necessarily have that budget in place. And we did, but not on the line item. And so I just said, you know what? Now I'm gonna make good with a promise. And this is the Erica, because Alicia's middle name is Erica. And so we named it after her, and that was certainly a fun close.
It really was. So after we decided, okay, we're gonna name this property after Alicia, we started working on all of the marketing and stuff. And I remember Alicia, Chris, and I went to the property. And we were driving around on the golf cart, and I would drive past something, and I was really hyping Alicia up. I'm like, Alicia, that's your playground. I'm like, that's your basketball court. Like, this is your building. I was like, I really wanted her to know, like, this is your property, girl. Like, this is named after you. And we were just being so stupid. Like, we were just giggling and like taking videos on the golf cart, and we were working, and not in that moment, but we just needed to take a little joyride around.
No, so by the way, I think that like one of the things we did so well early in Vesta that allowed us to grow like we did was we were all friends.
Yeah.
I mean, it was me, you, Alicia, Chris, and then we started to add you. You referenced Camille came on board at one point at the end of that phase of Vesta. But in that phase where it was just the four of us, I think one of the secrets to our success was that we could work largely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
But it didn't matter because we were all best friends. So it was like, yeah, I've been working for 7 days straight, and yeah, I work long hours, but part of that job is driving through the property, telling Alicia that, hyping Alicia up. Like, when you dedicate your life to something, it's so different than a job. And for the four of us, and it's one of the things that I'm really grateful for, and this topic probably has its own 100% podcast with you and me, but I'm grateful that when we added a fifth person to that leadership team, Ben, he is like us, so kind of dedicated that he can work those long hours. But when it's yours, it's different. You joke around, you mess around, but you're always working, and it's always it's nobody else's. It's yours. And I think actually, for the next time that you and I sit down together, I think we have to start, and Mario's gonna have to remind me to start here, but I think we start with what it was like for you, and it's a really hard subject, what it was like for you to give up some of your control when Ben came on board.
Yeah.
Because I know that was tough for me, that was tough for Alicia. Hell, it was probably tough for Ben on some levels.
Yeah, he probably felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. It's hard to...
Because he was kind of like the subject of everything.
Right.
He was also brand new, and yeah, I can't imagine.
But I definitely think that that's an interesting dynamic, because when I think, my goal for doing the podcast, for doing the blog, is to give people some insight into like what it's like behind the scenes, right? We can every time we sell a deal and make money for investors, we can throw something up online. CoStar will cover whoever covers us will cover it, but nobody will ever see this type of stuff. And so I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think we could go an hour on it easy, of what that transition was like.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that might be the next episode. Actually, I'd probably say let's just, that'll be the next episode.
Yeah, I'm totally down to talk about all that.
And then people can meet Ben.
Yes. Yeah, that's a perfect segue into meeting Ben. Well, Miranda, thank you so much. Not just for being on the podcast, but
for building everything with Alicia and I. And, you know, to say that we love you is an understatement.
I love you guys. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. That's all for See Here's the Deal. And we'll see you next time.